Perek Lamed, Pasuk Ches. Lamed Ches. You have it? 1 second. Earlier. Lamed Beis. Lamed Beis. Okay? The Torah tells us that when we're cast away in exile and we experience the klola, the curse, v'shavta ad Hashem Elokecha, right? You will return to Hashem, v'shamati b'kolo, kol asher anochi nitzav chayom, ata uvenecha b'chol vav chol nafshcha. You will return and listen and heed the word of Hashem, you and your children, with all your hearts and all your souls. So seemingly, what it seems, this pasuk v'shavta Hashem Elokecha is tshuva, right? You're doing tshuva, but we'll see in a moment. This is not tshuva yet. This we'll see in a moment is, if you remember, the Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh had said, the pasuk Aleph says, when all the bracha and klala will come upon you. So if you remember, Ohr HaChaim asked, HaKadosh asked, it should say, when the curse comes upon you, what's the bracha? Because only by discerning between when we had bracha and why now we don't have bracha, we'll understand the difference is because we ourselves had a shift in our behavior vis-a-vis Hashem. Therefore, that's where the klala came. So v'shavta ad Hashem Elokecha is, that will cause you to consider coming back, because you understand the path you've taken is wrong. And that's the cause of all your problems. V'shavta ad Hashem Elokecha, you will return. But we'll see this is not true yet. This is speaking about, it's the process of returning. Then it says, V'shav Hashem Elokecha eshvuscha v'chamecha. He'll bring in your exiles. Then it says in Vav, Umol Hashem Elokecha l'vavcha ves l'vav zerecha. Then God will circumcise your hearts. What does that mean? If you learn not like the Ramban, so seeming that's tshuva. He will give you the ability to do tshuva. Umol Hashem Elokecha l'vavcha ves l'vav zerecha. Then over here in Pasuk Ches it says V'atatoshuv v'shamatu b'kol Hashem. So it seems to be Ches again you're doing tshuva, and you will return and you will heed the word of Hashem. So the Ohr HaChaim asks all these questions. We start in Pasuk Beis, says V'shavta Hashem Elokecha. You will return to Hashem and you heed His voice to do the mitzvahs b'chol vav chol nafshcha. Then it says, Umol Hashem Elokecha l'vavcha. Seems to be that's tshuva, circumcision of the heart. And then over here it says again, Atot Toshuv, in Pasuk Ches, and you're going to return v'shamat b'kol Hashem. I mean, we've already done tshuva. What's that Atot Toshuv v'shamat b'kol Hashem? V'asis is kol mitzvot nochim tzav chayom. Seems to be a lot that if we already had returned and done tshuva, and seeming there's no greater tshuva than Umol Hashem Elokecha l'vavcha. God will circumcise your hearts to have that level of clarity. So what's that Toshuv? So the Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh explains it this way. Ochein, Yaakov, I'm not sure if you have the Mikoros Gedolos. If you look in the Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh, and this is on Pasuk.
Thank you, Rabbi, so much.
Pasuk Vav, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So over here he says, a paragraph into second paragraph, Ochem l'fi Mashiprash Pashas Kisovo.
Oh, it's Kisovo.
Do you see it? In Pasuk Vav.
Yeah.
Be'inyan ha'brochos, be'in le'inyan ha'klolos, she'esh shlosha dvarim, klolius mitzvahs Hashem. Regarding the general blessings and curses, the three general mitzvahs that have every relevance to every Jew. Aleph, he Esek HaTorah. First, the Jew has to engage in Torah study. That's essential. Sheinis, Shmiras Mitzvahs Lo Saseh. Secondly, you have to observe the negative commandments. You can't cross those lines. Shlishis, thirdly, Ki Mitzvahs Saseh. Thirdly, you have to do the Mitzvahs Saseh. You know, David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Su Mei Rov Aseh Tov. That before you do the good, you have to first remove yourself from the negative. Su Mei Rov Aseh Tov. First, you observe the negative commandment, and then you do the positive commandment. If while you do, you haven't extricated yourself from the negative, the positive doesn't have the impact, the effect on you. So first you have to have a commitment, you're not crossing that line to do the wrong. And then we speak about being motivated to do the right. And now it goes to explain. We're speaking about what is the order that the tshuva should be effective. What is the order? Keneged tshuvas Talmud Torah. Regarding to return to the study of Torah, which we haven't. And that was the cause of many things. We stop studying, things start fading out, and we lose our clarity, and we don't have that sensitivity to why. First, you have to return to Hashem. How do you begin returning to Hashem? It says, to do mitzvosav, right? You and your children. It says, what is a path to do the mitzvahs? First thing is, you have to listen, heed his voice. What's heeding his voice? You have to know what he's saying. So that's the study of Torah. The first stage to get involved, at the entry point, you have to start studying Torah. And if you do that, that is enough. Hashem will bring in the exiles. Ka'omram zal shebeschus esek haTorah yisron negolim. As he cites the Zohar, in the merit of the study of Torah, Klal Yisrael will be redeemed. Gam Oma Alma of the Oretz, as the Gemara says, based on the pasuk in Alma of the Oretz in Eicha, they asked why were we exiled? Vayom Hashem al Ozum es Torosi. So the cause of exile is Ozum es Torosi. We abandoned Lozeh Kishe Talmud. If the cause is we abandoned the Torah, so what would be the basis for our return? It's re-engaging in the Torah. Lozeh Kishe Talmud Torah Yikaptzem Hashem. God will gather us in. V'yavim el Oretz Asher Yorshu. We will go back to the land which we inherited due to our avos. So v'shavta Hashem Elokecha, it says v'shamata bekolo. When you return to Torah, then you're going to hear His voice. Ucheneged shmiras lo saseh. What about the negative commandments? That's the second, that you have to commit yourself. You're not going to cross the line to violate the lo saseh. Omal mol Hashem Elokecha es levavcha. V'yodua ki orlas halev hu asos resha vavas resha. Doing evil and having a desire to do evil, that's crossing the line. Shaliba shlodom mechamdoso. It's due to the desire of your heart that draws you there. Uchnegrom amol lavas Hashem pirush shetalbish avo. Once Hashem removes that, gives you that siyaptit shmaya, you make the commitment not to cross those lines. Asher tikin bo chatoichen brioscha b'neimus yididus tevus elokecha. It's a mol Hashem elokecha. Elokecha means there's an intimacy, there's a personalization. V'yichad schar lezeh sheyapoch Hashem kol atzoros mi'olenu. And if we commit ourselves not to cross those lines, Hashem will bring kol atzoros mi'olenu also, and He will bring all our suffering on our enemies. Kom v'nosa al oyevecha. He will, our predicament that we experienced in exile, those sufferings will be brought on enemies. Ucheneged ki mitzvah aseh. And what corresponds to the mitzvah aseh? V'oma atotoshuv v'osiso. You return and you will do. What's doing? Doing is aseh. Es kol mitzosav hariz mitzvah aseh. V'yichod lehem schar hakroves hatoeles v'omer v'osircho v'yoshev losus. And when you do that, He will increase your number and He will rejoice with you. When you do the mitzvah aseh, He will rejoice with you. Because that's the actualization of the mitzvah aseh. Okay? So we're speaking about the three stages. First, you have to return to Torah. Then commit yourself not to violate the negative commandment. And then Hashem will give you the ability to have the interest, to be motivated to do the mitzvah aseh. And that's what David says, Sumei Rav Asei Tov. I always mention the Ramban, the famous Ramban, whenever there's, Ernie, you can say it over, whenever there's a conflict between Asei Los Asei, right? And you can't reconcile to what do we say, Asei Docha Los Asei. The Asei supersedes the negative. Why does the Asei Docha Los Asei? The answer is, it's a posuk in the Torah. It's based on a limut. Because the Torah juxtaposes the mitzvah of tzitzis to the Los Asei of Shabdis, of Kilayim. To tell us that if they're conflicted, you put tzitzis, wool tzitzis on a linen garment. That's Asei Docha Los Asei. Because you're obligated to put tzitzis. But if you put the wool tzitzis on a linen garment, you created shatnez. Asay is the overriding factor. But what's the rationale? So he explains the Ramban. Los asay is yiras Hashem. Why does a person not cross the line? You have yiras Hashem. If you revere Hashem, that's enough not to. What about to be motivated to do the will of Hashem? That's avos Hashem. The mitzvah of ava is greater than the mitzvah of yira. So therefore, when there's a conflict between Av and Yira, Asay Docha Los Asay. That's the famous Ramban. So we're saying over here, before we talk about doing the Asay, first you have to refrain from the Los Asay. That's for Shamarta. You have to observe the mitzvahs, not to violate them. And after you have that in place, and how does that come about? When you make the commitment, Umol Hashem es levovcha. You will no longer have the desire to cross those lines once you make that commitment. Then we speak about v'shamatim kol Hashem elokecha. You will heed His voice. When you heed His voice, that's going forward. That's the mitzvah saseh. So you go from yiras Hashem to avos Hashem. That's exactly what the Torah is telling us over here. So I always say in the bracha of tshuva in Shemon Esrei, what do we say? Hashivenu avinu l'sarasecha. The first stage of tshuva, Hashivenu avinu l'sarasecha, bring us back to your Torah. That we should have an interest and a value, that we should study the Torah. That's Hashivenu avinu l'sarasecha. Then v'korvenu malkeinu v'secha. Then bring us close to your service. That's the doing. The service, korvenu malkeinu l'secha. It's close to your avoda. That's the asay. But it has to start with Hashivenu avinu l'sarasecha. It first starts with the study of Torah, and then you advance from Torah to korvenu malkeinu v'secha.